Henry had never been lucky with money. His life was full of small failures and quiet disappointments. Jobs came and went, plans failed, and friends moved on. Now he had only 50 cents left in his pocket. 50 cents and no idea where he would sleep tonight. The sun was sinking behind the hills, painting the sky in orange and pink streaks, and the air had the faint smell of pine and earth. Henry walked slowly through the town, feeling the weight of the day on his shoulders. The streets were mostly empty. A few late shopkeepers were closing their stores, and a cat slipped silently along the fences. Henry felt invisible. He had no home, no family, and no future that looked certain. He walked aimlessly, hoping to find something that could change even a little of his bad luck. That was when he noticed a sign hanging from a crooked post. It swayed slightly in the evening wind. The paint had faded and the letters were almost unreadable. But Henry could make out the words, Trail Lodge, for sale. The building itself looked abandoned. Its windows were cracked and the wood of the walls had darkened with age. The roof sagged in some places and the porch creaked under the slightest touch. Most people would have passed it by thinking it was useless. Most people did not have 50 cents and a mind full of curiosity. Henry stopped and stared at the lodge. A strange feeling stirred in his chest, a mix of hope and excitement. Could he really buy a building with his last coin? Could this old lodge be his new beginning? He stepped forward and pushed the door. It swung open slowly, making a sound like a tired sigh. Dust swirled in the sunlight that streamed through the broken windows. The air smelled of old wood and time itself. Inside, the lodge was filled with memories that had not been touched in decades. Broken chairs leaned against walls. A fireplace stood cold and empty, its bricks blackened from long-forgotten fires. The floorboards groaned under Henry's careful steps. Everywhere he looked, there were signs of life that had once been vibrant, now frozen in time. A note on the counter caught his eye. It was small, neatly written, and surprisingly clear despite the dust around it. It read, Trail Lodge, yours for 50 cents. Handle with care. Henry blinked. His last coin, 50 cents. It was not a joke. It was real. The lodge, with all its age and mystery, was now within his reach. His hand trembled slightly as he placed the coin on the counter. The moment it touched the wood, a soft hum filled the room. Henry froze. The sound was low and steady, wrapping around him like a gentle wind. It seemed to come from the walls themselves, as if the lodge was alive and welcoming him. He took a deep breath and began exploring more. The rooms were full of odd and fascinating things. In one corner he found a stack of old maps, each more detailed than the last. They showed trails and paths that no longer existed. Rivers had changed, mountains had disappeared from the maps, and forests seemed to stretch farther than any modern record. Henry studied them carefully, wondering how such knowledge had been preserved here. The library was even more interesting. Shelves lined with books reached from the floor to the ceiling. The covers were faded, but the pages felt strong and thick. Titles spoke of distant lands, strange creatures, and lost civilizations. Henry picked up a book about an ancient forest, its pages filled with sketches of plants that glowed under the moonlight, and animals that were said to disappear and reappear at will. He felt a shiver of excitement. This was not just a lodge. It was a place full of secrets. Henry wandered further and discovered a locked door at the end of a hallway. It was heavy, made of dark wood, and had no handle, only a keyhole. He pressed his hand against it, feeling a strange warmth that seemed to pulse from the wood. Something inside him whispered that behind this door lay answers to questions he had not even thought of. The sun was now gone, and darkness filled the lodge. Henry lit a small lantern he found in the kitchen. Its flame flickered softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The shadows seemed almost alive, moving with the rhythm of the hum he could still hear. Henry felt both fear and excitement. He had no idea what he would find, but he knew he could not leave without looking. He explored the main floor carefully. The kitchen had old pots and pans, some rusted, some surprisingly intact. A dusty table sat in the center, its surface scratched and worn. Henry imagined families sitting there, eating, talking, and laughing. He could almost hear their voices echoing faintly through the lodge. In the living room, an old piano stood silently in the corner. Henry pressed a key and the note rang out, strange and beautiful in the quiet room. He smiled. Perhaps this lodge was meant for him after all. Upstairs, the rooms were small but cozy. Henry noticed that the walls were lined with faint carvings. Some looked like letters, others like symbols he did not understand. He ran his fingers over them, feeling the history and care behind each mark. He wondered who had lived here before and what stories they had left behind. By now, Henry realized that this lodge was more than a building. It was a keeper of memories, a guardian of secrets, and perhaps a door to something far greater than he could imagine. The hum from the walls continued, soft and steady, as if it wanted him to explore further. Henry went back to the basement door. The darkness behind it seemed to call to him. He pressed his ear against the wood and heard nothing except the faint echo of his own heartbeat. The keyhole seemed ordinary, but the wood around it glowed faintly in the lantern light. Henry felt a sense of wonder. He did not know what lay below, but he knew that whatever it would change his life forever. He sat down on the stairs leading to the basement and took a deep breath. With only 50 cents, he had bought a lodge. Not just any lodge, but a place that seemed to live and breathe with history, mystery, and magic. Henry realized that his last coin had bought him more than shelter. It had bought him a chance to discover something incredible. As night deepened, the wind outside whispered through the broken windows. Henry felt a strange calm settle over him. He was no longer just a man with nothing. He was a man with a purpose, a man with a mystery waiting to be uncovered. The Trail Lodge had chosen him, and he felt ready to answer its call. For the first time in his life, Henry went to sleep with hope in his heart. The lodge hummed softly around him as if guarding his dreams. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing clearly. His life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The next morning, Henry woke to the sound of birds chirping outside the broken windows of the Trail Lodge. Sunlight streamed through the cracks in the walls, casting golden patterns on the dusty floor. The hum he had heard yesterday was still faintly present, as if the lodge was alive and watching him. Henry felt a surge of courage. Today, he would explore the basement. He approached the heavy wooden door at the end of the hallway. It had stood there silently for years, waiting for someone curious enough to discover its secret. Henry examined the keyhole. There was no key, but as he pressed his hand against the door, he felt a vibration, a warmth that seemed to seep into his fingers. The hum grew louder, and then with a soft click, the door swung open. Henry blinked in surprise. He had not expected it to open so easily. A narrow staircase led down into darkness. He grabbed the lantern and descended slowly. The air was cooler here, and a faint earthy smell filled his nose. The walls were lined with stones, rough and uneven, and Henry could see old carvings etched into them. They looked like letters and symbols, but he could not recognize their meaning. At the bottom of the stairs, Henry discovered a room unlike any other he had seen in the lodge. It was circular, and the walls seemed to curve inward slightly. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it rested a small wooden box. The box was intricately carved with patterns of leaves and stars. It seemed ordinary, yet Henry felt a strange energy radiating from it. He reached out carefully and lifted the lid. Inside, he found a collection of objects that made his eyes widen. There were tiny crystals glowing faintly, and small metallic tools that seemed old and delicate. There were also papers covered in strange writing and diagrams that Henry could not understand. One paper had a drawing of a symbol that matched the carvings on the basement walls. Henry picked up one of the crystals. It was cool to the touch, and when he held it close to the lantern, it glowed brighter. A soft vibration ran through his hand, and for a moment, he felt as if the room itself was alive. The hum became louder, wrapping around him like a gentle song. Henry realized that the objects were not ordinary. They were connected to something far greater, something he had never imagined. He carefully examined the papers. They seemed to describe ways to use the objects in the room, though the writing was difficult to understand. Some diagrams showed the crystals being arranged in patterns, while others suggested ways to combine the metallic tools with natural elements. Henry felt a mix of fear and excitement. He was holding knowledge that had been hidden for decades, perhaps centuries. As he explored further, Henry noticed a small trapdoor in the corner of the room. It was covered with dust and cobwebs, almost invisible unless someone looked closely. His heart beat faster. The basement already held secrets, but this trapdoor suggested there was more to discover. He knelt and pulled it open. A ladder led down into another smaller chamber. The air was cooler here, and the hum of the lodge seemed stronger. The chamber was filled with shelves, stacked with objects similar to those in the main basement room. There were jars of powders that shimmered in the lantern light, bundles of dried herbs, and more crystals of different colors and sizes. Henry noticed that some of the crystals pulsed faintly, almost like they had a heartbeat. He realized that these objects were not just old relics. They were alive in some way, holding energy that he could feel even from his hands. In the center of this chamber was a larger object, covered with a velvet cloth. Henry approached it cautiously. He lifted the cloth, revealing a small mechanical device. It had gears and levers, and tiny lights blinked softly along its surface. The design was intricate and delicate, unlike anything Henry had seen. As he touched it, the hum of the lodge grew louder, and the lantern flickered as if responding to the device. Henry spent hours examining the basement. Every object, every diagram, every crystal seemed to tell a story. The lodge had been more than a place to stay. It had been a hidden laboratory, a workshop of someone who had discovered knowledge far beyond what most people could imagine. Henry felt a thrill of discovery. He realized that he was standing in a place that could change the world if its secrets were understood. Despite his excitement, Henry felt the weight of responsibility. The objects were delicate, powerful, and mysterious. He could not simply take them without understanding their purpose. He decided to organize what he had found, carefully placing the crystals, papers, and tools back on the shelves. He marked each object in his mind, promising himself that he would return tomorrow to study them further. As night approached, Henry climbed back upstairs. The sun had set, and the lodge was bathed in the soft glow of the moon. He looked out of a broken window and saw the forest beyond. The world seemed quiet, yet full of possibility. The trail lodge had given him more than a roof over his head. It had given him a purpose, a mission to uncover the secrets hidden in its walls. Henry knew he could not share this with anyone yet. The knowledge was too powerful, too delicate. He had to understand it himself before revealing it. But even as he thought this, he felt a strange certainty. The lodge had chosen him, and he was ready to take on whatever challenge lay ahead. That night, Henry could not sleep. He lay on a creaky old bed, listening to the hum that seemed to echo through the lodge. It was comforting, like a reminder that he was not alone. The objects in the basement were waiting for him, calling him back to discover more. Henry closed his eyes, feeling a mix of fear, excitement, and determination. He had only 50 cents and a lodge that was falling apart, but he also had a discovery that could shake the world if he was brave enough to understand it. By morning, Henry was ready. He gathered his lantern and returned to the basement. Today, he would study the papers more closely. He would arrange the crystals according to the diagrams and see what secrets they held. As he worked, he felt a connection forming between himself and the objects. The hum of the lodge seemed to guide his hands, helping him place each crystal, each tool in the right position. Hours passed, and Henry began to notice patterns. The crystals resonated with one another, sending faint pulses of light through the room. The metallic tools reflected the lantern light in precise ways, creating shapes and shadows on the walls. Henry realized that this was a system, a design left by someone who had understood how energy and matter could interact in ways ordinary people could not comprehend. He felt a sense of wonder, unlike anything he had experienced before. The lodge was no longer just a building. It was a doorway to knowledge, a place where discovery and mystery intertwined. Henry understood that his life had changed forever. He had stepped into a world few had ever seen, a world hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious and brave enough to explore it. As the day ended, Henry looked around the basement with satisfaction. He had made progress, but he knew there was much more to uncover. The lodge had secrets that went deeper than he had imagined, and he was determined to find them all. For the first time in his life, Henry felt truly alive. The trail lodge had given him purpose, adventure, and a chance to touch something extraordinary. The hum of the lodge continued as he climbed back upstairs, a reminder that the mysteries below were still waiting. Henry smiled. He had discovered the first layer of the lodge's secret, but he knew there was more to come. The world outside might never know, but Henry understood that he was part of something bigger than himself. He had only 50 cents and a lodge full of mysteries, but he also had courage, curiosity, and a sense of wonder that would guide him through whatever lay ahead. Henry went to bed that night, lantern by his side, ready to dream about the secrets he would uncover tomorrow. The trail lodge had chosen him, and he was ready to answer its call. Henry awoke to a soft light filtering through the broken windows of the trail lodge. The hum of the building was still present, gentle but insistent, as if it wanted him to continue his work. Yesterday, he had explored the basement and discovered the strange crystals, the metallic tools, and the glowing papers. Today, he felt a new determination. He was certain that there was something even more important hidden in the lodge, something that could explain the purpose of all these objects. He ate a small meal from the supplies he had brought with him and carried his lantern to the basement. The air was cooler than upstairs, and the hum felt stronger as he approached the circular room. Henry placed the lantern on the pedestal and began examining the papers again. The diagrams showed patterns and connections between the crystals and tools, but there were symbols he had not noticed before. One of the papers caught his attention. It had a drawing of a trail winding through mountains and forests, leading to a large symbol that resembled a star enclosed in a circle. Henry recognized it immediately. It matched one of the carvings on the basement walls. His heart raced as he realized that this was more than a drawing. It was a map. He spread the paper on the floor and studied it carefully. The trail was detailed, showing landmarks and paths that no modern maps recorded. Rivers, cliffs, and forests were drawn with incredible accuracy. Even more surprisingly, the map seemed to include the lodge itself as a starting point. Henry traced the path with his finger, feeling a strange energy beneath his hand. It was as if the map wanted him to follow it. Henry looked around the basement. The crystals on the pedestal glowed faintly as he held the map near them. The metallic tools vibrated slightly, and the diagrams on the other papers seemed to shift, forming lines that connected to the trail on the map. Henry realized that the lodge was not only a place to store these objects, but also a guide. The map was a key, showing the way to a location that had been hidden for centuries. He studied the trail carefully. The path led through forests and mountains, through rivers and valleys, until it ended at a place marked with the star symbol. Henry wondered what he would find there. He imagined ancient treasures, lost knowledge, or even artifacts from civilizations that had disappeared long ago. He felt a thrill of excitement. This could be the greatest discovery of his life. Henry decided to prepare for the journey. He gathered the most important items from the basement, a few crystals, the metallic tools, and the map itself. He carefully placed them in his bag, making sure not to damage anything. Each object seemed to hum softly, as if acknowledging that they would be part of his journey. Henry felt a strong connection to the lodge. It had given him the map and the tools, and now it seemed to trust him to follow the path. Before leaving, he examined the papers one last time. Some diagrams suggested how to use the crystals and tools to unlock hidden doors or activate mechanisms along the trail. Henry realized that the journey would not be simple. The map was only part of the puzzle. The crystals and tools were necessary to navigate the path safely and to uncover the secrets it protected. Henry stepped outside the lodge. The morning sun shone brightly, illuminating the forest beyond. He took a deep breath and felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything he had felt before. He was no longer a man with 50 cents and nothing to his name. He was an explorer, a seeker of secrets, and the Trail Lodge had chosen him for a mission that could change everything. He followed the first steps of the trail. The path led through the forest behind the lodge. The trees were tall and ancient, their branches forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight. Henry moved carefully, using the map to guide him. He noticed markings on the trees, small carvings that matched symbols on the map. It was clear that someone had walked this path long ago and wanted the journey to be followed by someone worthy. As Henry moved deeper into the forest, he tested the first of the crystals. According to the diagram, he was supposed to hold it in front of a carved stone. The crystal glowed brightly in his hand, and the stone emitted a soft light. A hidden passage opened in the ground, revealing a staircase leading down. Henry descended carefully. The passage was narrow, but it was clear that it had been used by someone in the past. At the bottom of the passage, Henry found a small chamber. Inside, there were more symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. He arranged the crystals according to the diagrams, and a mechanism in the wall moved silently. A hidden compartment opened, revealing a scroll made of old, fragile paper. Henry unrolled it carefully. The scroll contained information about the trail ahead and warnings about the challenges he would face. Henry read the scroll with great attention. It described obstacles and puzzles designed to test the mind and courage of the traveler. It also mentioned that the trail led to a discovery that could illuminate the understanding of the world. Henry's heart raced. This was more than treasure. This was knowledge, ancient knowledge that had been hidden for centuries. He spent the rest of the day following the trail, solving small puzzles and unlocking hidden compartments along the way. Each step brought him closer to the final destination marked on the map. Henry realized that the trail was designed to prepare him, to ensure that only someone with patience, intelligence, and courage could reach the end. As night approached, Henry set up a small camp near a stream indicated on the map. He placed the crystals around him, as instructed by the diagrams, to protect him and guide him through the night. He felt a deep connection to the trail, the lodge, and the objects he carried. Everything seemed to be part of a larger design, and Henry understood that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Before sleeping, Henry studied the map once more. He traced the path to the star symbol, imagining what awaited him there. He wondered about the person who had created the lodge, the objects, and the trail. Whoever it was had known that someone would eventually find it, someone capable of understanding the secrets. Henry felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. He had discovered the beginning of something extraordinary, and it was up to him to see it through. That night, as Henry slept under the stars, he dreamed of glowing crystals, hidden chambers, and the final discovery that awaited him. The trail lodge and the objects he had found guided his dreams, filling them with images of paths and puzzles, and the sense that he was part of something larger than himself. He woke with the first rays of sunlight, feeling stronger, braver, and more determined than ever. Henry packed his things and continued along the trail. He solved more puzzles, used the crystals to unlock hidden mechanisms, and followed the map through forests, over streams, and up gentle slopes. The journey was challenging, but every step brought new excitement and wonder. He knew he was on the path to something that could change not only his life, but perhaps the world itself. By the end of the day, Henry reached a hill overlooking a valley. According to the map, this was near the location of the star symbol. In the valley below, he saw a structure partially hidden by trees and mist. It looked ancient, built of stone with carvings that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Henry's heart pounded. He had reached the place the map had been leading him to. He descended carefully toward the structure. The hum he had heard in the lodge now seemed to come from this place, stronger and more vibrant. Henry realized that this was the heart of the mystery, the final location that held the secrets the lodge had been protecting. He approached the entrance, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. Henry took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was cool and filled with a faint, glowing light. Symbols and carvings covered the walls, and in the center of the room a pedestal held an object covered with cloth. Henry's hands trembled slightly as he lifted the cloth. Underneath was a crystal larger than any he had seen before, glowing with a bright, pure light. Henry realized that this was the key, the most important object of all, the discovery that could shake the world. The hum around him grew into a harmonious sound, and Henry knew that he had reached the beginning of a journey far greater than anything he had imagined. Henry understood that this was not just a crystal or a treasure. It was knowledge, energy, and history combined into a single object. He had found the secret the lodge had been guarding, and now it was his responsibility to understand it. The trail lodge, the trail, and the objects had led him here, and the adventure was far from over. Henry smiled, feeling the weight of what he had discovered and the excitement of what was to come. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and revelations, but tonight, he allowed himself to marvel at the wonder before him. The world was about to change, and Henry was at the center of it. Henry stood in the ancient chamber staring at the glowing crystal. It was larger than any crystal he had seen, radiant and pure, pulsing gently with a light that seemed alive. The hum he had felt in the trail lodge and along the trail was strongest here, wrapping around him like a warm, invisible current. For the first time in his life, Henry felt a mix of awe and responsibility. He was holding something that could change everything. He carefully examined the crystal. Its surface was smooth, almost glass-like, but inside, patterns moved as if they had a life of their own. Colors shifted, showing intricate designs that resembled maps, symbols, and scenes from long ago. Henry felt as if the crystal contained knowledge, wisdom and energy that stretched far beyond the lodge, the trail, or even the world he knew. Henry remembered the papers from the basement, the diagrams of the crystals and the metallic tools. He realized that this crystal was the center of everything. It was the reason the lodge had existed, the reason the trail had been laid out, and the reason someone had hidden these objects so carefully. The crystal was not just a discovery. It was a key to understanding something extraordinary. He touched the crystal lightly. The light brightened and spread warmth through his hands and arms. Images flashed before his eyes. Forests, rivers, mountains, and cities. He saw people from long ago using crystals similar to the ones he had carried. He saw inventions, knowledge, and discoveries that had been lost over time. Henry realized that the crystal was a repository of knowledge, holding the wisdom of generations in its glowing core. Henry stepped back, feeling the weight of the discovery. He knew he had to be careful. The crystal was powerful, but he did not fully understand it yet. He decided to study it systematically. He placed the smaller crystals he had brought from the lodge around the pedestal, arranging them according to the diagrams from the basement. The light from the smaller crystals intensified, forming a network of energy connecting them to the large crystal. A soft vibration ran through the floor, and the chamber walls glowed faintly. Henry watched in amazement as symbols appeared on the walls, moving and forming patterns. He realized that the crystal was communicating with him, guiding him to understand its purpose. He felt as if he could listen to the history of the world itself, the knowledge of civilizations long gone, and the secrets of nature that had been hidden for centuries. Henry spent hours observing and experimenting. Each interaction with the crystal revealed new patterns and insights. The metallic tools acted as conductors, channeling the crystal's energy and revealing connections he could never have imagined. He understood that this was not a simple object. It was a bridge between the past and the present, a tool that could illuminate mysteries of the world and show possibilities for the future. As night approached, Henry decided to record his observations. He carefully sketched the patterns, symbols, and the way the crystals interacted. He wrote notes about the energy flows, the glowing symbols, and the way the metallic tools directed the crystal's power. Every note felt valuable, as if he were documenting a discovery that the world needed but had never known. Henry realized that the crystal could be used in many ways. It could show lost knowledge, reveal hidden paths, and even guide humans to understand nature more deeply. It could illuminate science, geography, and history in ways no one had imagined. But Henry also understood the danger. If the crystal fell into the wrong hands, its power could be misused. He had to protect it and learn its secrets carefully. The next morning, Henry returned to the chamber with renewed determination. He experimented with different arrangements of the crystals and tools, discovering how the energy could flow and create patterns that seemed to mirror the world outside. He saw images of mountains, oceans, and forests, as if the crystal could map the entire planet. He felt a deep connection to the lodge, the trail, and the crystal itself. Everything had led him here for a purpose. Henry also discovered that the crystal responded to thought and intention. When he concentrated on an image or a question, the patterns shifted to provide insight. He realized that this crystal was not just a passive object, but a living archive of knowledge. It could reveal secrets to those patient and wise enough to listen. He felt a sense of responsibility and excitement. He had the power to learn, to understand, and perhaps to share discoveries that could benefit the world. Days passed as Henry continued his work. He developed a system to interact with the crystal safely, using the smaller crystals and tools to focus its energy. He documented every observation, every pattern, and every insight. Each day brought new revelations. He began to understand natural phenomena, ancient civilizations, and even advanced concepts that seemed impossible to learn on his own. The crystal was a teacher, and Henry was its student. One evening, Henry noticed a faint glow forming a pattern he had not seen before. It resembled a path leading from the chamber to the outside world, almost like a map. He followed it, realizing that the crystal was guiding him toward another discovery. Outside, the valley stretched before him, bathed in moonlight. The pattern suggested a hidden location, possibly another chamber or a secret site that had been hidden for centuries. Henry felt a thrill of excitement. The crystal had revealed not only knowledge but also guidance. It was as if it wanted him to continue exploring, to follow the path and uncover more secrets. He packed a small bag with essentials, the smaller crystals and the metallic tools ready to follow the path. The trail lodge had led him here, But now the crystal was guiding him beyond the lodge into a world of hidden wonders. As he followed the path, Henry reflected on his journey. From his last 50 cents to buying the lodge, discovering the basement, following the trail, and now understanding the crystal, he realized how extraordinary his adventure had become. He felt a deep gratitude for the lodge, for the objects, and for the chance to uncover something truly remarkable. The path led him through forests, across streams, and over hills. The glow of the crystals in his bag responded to the patterns he had seen, helping him navigate. He realized that the crystal's energy could guide him even in the dark, showing hidden routes and avoiding obstacles. It was a combination of wisdom, intuition, and technology that he had never known existed. By the time he reached a small clearing, Henry discovered a stone arch, partially hidden by vines. The arch was covered in carvings similar to those he had seen in the lodge and the basement. The crystals he carried began to hum in harmony, creating a network of light that connected them to the large crystal. Henry realized that this was another entrance to a hidden chamber, one that held the next layer of the secret he had been following. Henry stepped through the arch, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. The glow of the crystals illuminated the chamber, revealing walls covered in inscriptions and diagrams. At the center was a pedestal similar to the one in the lodge, but this one held an even larger crystal, radiating light that filled the room. Henry understood immediately that he had reached a second stage of the discovery, one that expanded on everything he had learned. The energy of the crystal was overwhelming but steady. Henry could feel it guiding him, showing him the connections between nature, history, and knowledge. He realized that the discoveries he had made were only the beginning. The world contained hidden truths waiting to be understood, and the crystals were keys to unlocking them. Henry spent the night studying the new chamber, arranging the crystals and tools according to the patterns he had observed. Every movement, every adjustment revealed more insight. He understood that this was a legacy left by someone who had devoted their life to knowledge, a person who had hidden these secrets for centuries to ensure that only the worthy could find them. As dawn approached, Henry felt a deep sense of purpose. He had uncovered not just the power of a crystal, but a system of knowledge and guidance that could change the world. The Trail Lodge had been the beginning. The trail had led him here, and now the crystal had revealed its true power. Henry knew that the next stage of his journey would be even more extraordinary. He had learned to listen, observe, and understand, and he was ready to follow where the crystal guided him. Henry stood in the hidden chamber, staring at the largest crystal he had ever seen. Its light filled the room with a brilliance that made the carvings on the walls glow. The hum he had followed from the Trail Lodge and along the secret trail now vibrated in harmony, echoing through the chamber and filling Henry with a sense of awe. He realized that this crystal was the heart of the discovery, the ultimate key that linked the lodge, the trail, and every object he had uncovered. He stepped closer and examined the pedestal. The crystal's surface shimmered with patterns that moved as if alive, revealing scenes from history, nature, and distant lands. Henry understood that this crystal contained knowledge far beyond ordinary understanding. It was not merely a source of power, but a repository of wisdom collected over centuries. The people who had hidden it had wanted it to be discovered only by someone who was patient, curious, and careful. Henry took a deep breath. He arranged the smaller crystals he had brought in the pattern suggested by the diagrams he had studied in the lodge and along the trail. The metallic tools acted as conductors, creating a web of light and energy that connected the crystals to the central one. The chamber vibrated gently as if alive, responding to his movements and intentions. Henry felt the energy flowing through him, connecting him to the lodge, the trail, and the secrets of the world. He lifted his hands over the crystal, focusing on the questions that had filled his mind for weeks. Who had created this place? What was the purpose of the crystals? And what did they want him to discover? The crystal's light shifted, forming patterns that answered his questions in ways he could understand. It revealed a network of knowledge, showing the interconnectedness of nature, human history, and the universe itself. Henry realized that the crystal held the secrets of life, growth, and energy in ways humanity had never known. The patterns shifted again, forming an image of the Trail Lodge, the forest, and the mountains surrounding it. The crystal seemed to be guiding him back to the beginning, showing that everything he had experienced, the lodge, the trail, the puzzles, and the crystals, was part of a larger plan. Henry understood that the journey had prepared him for this moment, teaching him patience, observation, and care. The discovery was not just about the crystal. It was about understanding the world through careful attention and respect for knowledge. Henry spent hours observing and experimenting. He discovered that the crystal could reveal lost inventions, hidden paths, and ancient wisdom. It showed him ways that humans had learned to live in harmony with nature long ago, using resources efficiently, creating energy without harm, and understanding the cycles of life. He realized that the crystal was not only powerful, but also benevolent. It was meant to teach, guide, and inspire those who discovered it. As Henry studied the patterns, he noticed a series of symbols that seemed to form a puzzle. The solution revealed a hidden compartment in the pedestal. Inside was a small metallic device intricately designed with glowing buttons and delicate levers. Henry carefully picked it up and examined it. The device appeared to interact with the crystal, amplifying its energy and allowing the user to focus on specific knowledge or insights. Henry realized that this was a tool left by the creators to help someone like him understand the crystal safely and fully. He tested the device carefully, following the instructions he could decipher from the diagrams. When he activated it, the crystal's light brightened and new patterns appeared. These patterns revealed information about places far beyond the lodge and trail, showing hidden knowledge scattered across the world. Henry felt a surge of excitement. The discovery was not just local. It was global. It had the potential to change the understanding of history, science, and nature. Henry also realized the responsibility that came with this discovery. The crystal's power and knowledge were immense. If misused, it could be dangerous. But if shared wisely, it could benefit the world in ways unimaginable. He felt the weight of the responsibility pressing on him, but he also felt ready. The trail lodge, the crystals, the trail, and the hidden chambers had prepared him for this. He was patient, careful, and determined. He understood that he could guide the knowledge safely. Over the next several days, Henry continued his exploration of the chamber, using the device and the smaller crystals to unlock more information from the large crystal. Each discovery was astonishing. He learned about natural energy sources, ancient engineering techniques, forgotten medicines, and ways to communicate with nature more effectively. The knowledge was practical, ethical, and full of wisdom. Henry understood that the creators of the crystal had intended for this wisdom to reach the world, but only through someone capable of understanding it fully. One morning, as the sunlight streamed through a small opening in the chamber, Henry noticed a final pattern emerging in the crystal's light. It was an image of the world with lines connecting mountains, rivers, forests, and cities. The crystal seemed to be showing him a map of hidden knowledge, locations around the world where other secrets were waiting to be discovered. Henry realized that his journey had only just begun. The trail lodge had led him here, but the crystal was guiding him to the next stage of discovery. Henry felt a sense of wonder and purpose. He knew that the world would be different once the knowledge from the crystal was shared. It could inspire people to live in harmony with nature, solve complex problems, and understand history in a new light. The journey from his last 50 cents to the trail lodge, the trail, and the crystal had prepared him to carry this knowledge responsibly. He carefully packed the smaller crystals and the metallic device, making sure everything was safe. The large crystal remained on its pedestal, glowing softly as if waiting for him to return. Henry stepped outside the chamber and looked at the valley below. The forest, mountains, and streams seemed alive with possibilities. He knew that the knowledge he had uncovered was not only about the past but also about shaping a better future. Henry returned to the trail lodge, carrying the smaller crystals and the device. He placed them carefully in the basement, ensuring they were organized and safe. The lodge seemed to hum in approval, as if acknowledging that Henry had understood its secrets and the purpose of the crystal. He realized that the lodge had been more than a building. It had been a guide, a teacher, and a protector of knowledge for centuries. Henry spent the next week studying and documenting everything he had discovered. He created detailed sketches, notes, and diagrams that could be understood by others who were patient, curious, and careful. He planned to share the knowledge gradually, ensuring that it would be used wisely. The crystal had shown him the path, but Henry knew it was his responsibility to guide others in using this knowledge safely and ethically. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Henry stood on the porch of the trail lodge, looking at the forest and valley beyond. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment and wonder. He had started with only 50 cents, a deserted lodge, and a sense of curiosity. Now he was the keeper of knowledge that could inspire the world. The journey had been long, challenging, and extraordinary. The trail lodge, the crystals, and the hidden chambers had changed his life forever. Henry realized that the greatest discovery was not just the crystal or the knowledge it contained. It was the journey itself, the patience, observation, and courage required to uncover the secrets. He understood that the world held mysteries waiting for those brave enough to explore them, and that knowledge could change everything when discovered responsibly. With a final look at the glowing valley, Henry felt ready for the next stage of his journey. He knew that the trail lodge, the crystals, and the path ahead would continue to guide him. The discovery had shaken his world, but it also promised to shake the world beyond, in ways that would inspire, enlighten, and transform lives. Henry smiled, knowing that he had fulfilled the first part of a remarkable adventure. The trail lodge had given him a chance, and he had embraced it fully. Now with the crystal, the smaller crystals, and the metallic device, he was ready to share the knowledge, protect it, and continue exploring the mysteries of the world. The journey from his last 50 cents to the discovery of the crystal had shown him that even the smallest beginning could lead to something extraordinary. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Henry stood quietly, listening to the hum of the lodge and the gentle whisper of the forest. He knew that the world would never be the same, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The trail lodge had revealed its secrets, and Henry had understood their importance. He was no longer a man with nothing. He was a man with purpose, knowledge, and the power to make a difference. The crystal had revealed its secrets. The trail lodge had guided him, and Henry was ready to share the discovery that would inspire the world for generations to come.